Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Eerie International, episode 465 this week. I forgot already. Is that the right number?
Yeah.
Okay, good. My name is David.
So often.
We're free for free.
This thing has happened so many times.
We're free for openings to podcasts that have derailed immediately. I'm so proud
I
of us.
asked twice before I started the intro too. So, good Lord, we're recording on a Friday. I'll chalk it up to that. I'm David from the United States.
I'm Andi from Germany.
I'm Dave from the UK.
And we are reunited again this week to talk about the film Roujin Z, or Zeto, if we want to be Japanese about it, as we found out before the pronunciation is more accurately pronounced, from 1991. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But first of all, Andi, welcome back to the podcast. We didn't reveal any of your Bavarian misadventures that were happening last week, but we're happy that you're safe, and presumably the country is more safe and secure for it. So
ended up in the hospital, but everything's fine now. So
yeah,
everyone's safe.
Absolutely,
I did my best, and so I had to sacrifice.
Ended up in the hospital like Rocky.
Yeah.
Well, not to because we're just talking about it. It will come up when we talk about the movie later. But I watched the movie today, and there's this guy lying in a hospital bed being hungry all the time. That was me last Friday. I spent the whole day in a hospital bed. I was so hungry because I directly from my bed, I went to the hospital, no breakfast, nothing. And my first meal was like at 5 p.m. So,
oh
boy. Yeah, that's rough. Combined with what was going on.
I can empathize.
Andi may not get into it, but obviously everything's okay. Andi's safe. Andi's fine. He's here. Don't want anyone to worry. But yeah, glad that you're back. All right. If this is your first time listening to the show, I got to get some energy back. I'm only halfway through my coffee. Welcome to the podcast. We are a horror show that talks about all kinds of horror stuff, other than this week, which we're not talking about something that's necessarily horror, but also, yeah, there's a lot of connections. It makes sense. We've got a bunch of old episodes. You can find us online, different archives, YouTube, etc., etc. Social media, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those places. Go give us a follow, give us a like, whatever it is described as. We also have a Gmail account, eerieinternational@gmail.com, if you want to send us some longer form thoughts. We actually have an email from last week from our friend Jordan. Yeah, if you tuned in last week, you heard us read part of it, and we left part of it out for Andi. Since it was directed towards him and he was out. So I'm going to revisit Jordan's email here. Let's see here. I just listened to your episode from a few months ago on my favorite movie, The Lighthouse, and I have a question for Andi. In the episode, you mentioned that you watched the movie about an hour before recording the podcast and that you wished you had more time to think it over and to formulate your opinion. Now that you've had that time, how has your opinion of the movie changed or evolved? Do you feel like you have a deeper understanding? Have you considered rewatching anytime soon? Did you change your mind and decide it was too pretentious after all? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you for your question. The thing is, since the recording was done, I did not think about the movie that much anymore. So if I had more time before we recorded, I probably would have thought about it more and maybe read a few things and maybe had done more of a deep dive into the movie and my thoughts. But since watching the movie and since recording the episode, I did talk to a friend about it a bit, but not too much. So my opinion has not changed. I don't think it's too pretentious. I think I was positive on the movie.
Yeah, I think so.
In our recording, and I still am. I'm not planning to rewatch it soon necessarily. I don't have it. I don't have quick access to it, so it's not like on a whim. If I paid money, I could, but I probably won't do that. So I don't really have free access to it, so that at any given day I could just on a whim give it another watch. It's very possible that at some point I will watch it again, and I would definitely be curious how a second watch of the movie would play for me. But yeah, currently it's not in my plans.
All right, Jordan, I hope you're happy for that answer after waiting 2 weeks. I'm not talking shit about your answer, Andi, just that he had to wait for it. I'm in a similar spot with I not that he asked me, but when I rewatched it, that was kind of my...
Make it about yourself, David. It's okay.
So I'm glad you asked, Jordan. I've seen The Lighthouse twice. I'm sure at some point too we'll maybe not necessarily revisit the movie for the show, although who knows, we've done that plenty of times. But yeah, there we go. Cool. All right. What else? Let's get into our stuff this week, what we watched, what we engaged with. I can kick us off because I have nothing. Alien Earth ended. We talked about that last week. I'm still watching Peacemaker. Finale of that comes out next week, but not horror. Although, some crazy Nazi shit went down, so in that sense, there's some horror. Other than that, it's been a lot of work. I've been continuing to read The Descent, that Jeff Long book. Still really liking it. There was one section of the book that I read that involved some pretty, even though it was written in a way that was trying to obfuscate what was going on, a sexual assault involving a child. That was rough. So it wasn't, the whole book isn't about that, but it was enough that when I read it, I was like, I hope Jeff Long regrets this. I don't know if he does or not. I don't think it's wrong to write about it, but it was so out of nowhere and jarring and tonally different than the rest of the book that I was just kind of like, man, either you messed up or your editor should have had you cut this, because it makes zero sense for the rest of it. Maybe it'll play into stuff later. Anyway, it's a random tangent. But other than that, still enjoying that book, but it is 500-600 pages long, so working my way through it. Other than that, I went and saw One Battle After Another. Loved it. One of my favorite movies of the year. Not horror at all. That's been it for me this week. So let me throw it over to Andi. You've been away, but I also know you've been busy with stuff. What have you been into, if anything?
Yeah, since I have not been on the last 2 episodes, I have a bit of a list here because I took in several things that relate to our podcast here. So last time we spoke, Fantasy Film Fest was still going on, so I have 2 more movies that I watched there. The first one was Exit 8, the movie adaptation of the video game of the same name, which I'm certain you are probably aware of because you are gamers, and as far as I know, that game is pretty popular. I was aware of the game before I knew there would be a movie, so if that tells you anything.
I'm trying to remember if I mentioned... I've beaten it. I played it and beat it. I mean, it's not long, but I probably mentioned it on the show, but it also... I wouldn't have talked about it for, 30 minutes. It's a pretty simple game. I don't know how the movie is structured, but I'm going to guess similar.
Yeah. So the theater was packed, which is not necessarily the case for every movie at Fantasy Film Fest, but I guess it being adapted from a video game had a bit of a broader reach than just the usual Fantasy Film Fest crowd. So that was pretty exciting to see the full theater. And from what I gathered, it seems like people really liked the movie and liked the adaptation of the game. I had seen like it was either a trailer for the game or a bit of a playthrough. I don't quite remember. I had seen bits of the game before I knew there would be a movie. And then the movie was announced. Bianca had sent me the trailer when she was in Japan, and she was very excited to see the movie. And then it was announced for Fantasy Film Fest, which was just lucky. And so we were able to go see it. And I really liked the movie. It seems like the movie is, as far as I know, the game doesn't really have much of a story. It's more of a puzzle escape game. Mm-hmm. And the movie looks exactly like the game, but then of course they had the task of writing a story for characters in the game, which is not in the original game. And I think they did a very good job of finding a story and melding it with the mechanics of the game. So I a story that makes sense for the mechanics of the game, so that at the point where the protagonist solves the puzzle, he has gone through something that leads him to a decision that he was unsure about in the beginning of the movie. I don't know if that makes sense
Yep,
for
it
listeners.
does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that worked really, really well. So that the game aspect, the mechanics, the puzzle does not become repetitive in the movie, and you witness the evolution of the protagonist and of characters through them going through those tunnels and trying to solve this puzzle, this riddle. So the one thing that you could criticize about the movie is that you could interpret it as a Japanese propaganda film
Wow.
for a very specific social problem that Japan is going through, which relates to our main topic of this week, actually.
Hmm.
I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't really want to spoil too much about the movie. But I think if you have the chance of seeing it, I think it's well worth seeing. As I said, I was very impressed by the how, because of course I knew about the mechanics of the game, and I was very curious how they would manage of implementing a story into this very simple premise of someone walking walking down an underground
Yeah.
tunnel and going back and forth and looking for things that change, and that's it, trying to solve this puzzle like 7 or 8 times in a row until he finds the exit. And how do you find a story that fits this this premise? And I think, as I said, they did that very well. So go see it if you have the chance. I don't know about any releases anywhere. Maybe it's already
excited to see
available in the US. I do not know.
I have a question about the tone, because one of the things I liked about the game is it's almost like it's classified and categorized, I think, often as and described as horror, but when you play the game, it's not I'm trying to think how to explain it. It's not explicitly or overtly a horror story. You're not being like hunted by monsters or haunted by something. But the liminal space, the circumstances, the way everything is lit, that all adds to like it feeling off, which gives it a horror vibe. So I was curious with the movie. I haven't even seen a trailer for the movie, but I'm assuming the movie leans into the horror more to make it more of a genre thing. That's my question.
So it does definitely does have creepy aspects to it, and I would think that because the difference from the game to the movie is that in the game, basically you are the protagonist, and in the movie you empathize with the protagonist that you see in the movie, and that protagonist, of course, is very baffled and surprised by what is going on until that person realizes what they need to do to get out of this labyrinth. So I think that probably enforces a sense of creepiness, where in the game it's you trying to solve a puzzle, which is a rather normal situation, and in the movie you witness something in a very unusual situation, first trying to understand the situation and then trying to solve the puzzle.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm cool with whatever. I mean, if they did something with the movie that was creepier than the game, I'm good with that. If it's the same, like I don't care. I think the entire approach is cool, but that's one aspect of it that I found pretty fascinating, because it's you could see screenshots from the game and just be like, why do people think this is scary? But then when you play it, when you're pulled into it, it does have an off kilter kind of thing. So cool. I'm excited for the movie.
I'm going here chronologically, so the next movie is not a fantasy film. This movie is just a movie that we rewatched because Bianca felt like it. We rewatched Alien vs. Predator. For some reason, that's a movie that every few years Bianca feels the urge to rewatch. So this was probably my third or fourth watch of the movie. I think this time I liked it the most so far. it gets better over time, or my standards are lowered. That's also very possible.
It's weirdly, I also watched not Alien versus Predator, but a trailer for Alien versus Predator this week, because after Daniel and I watched Aliens, he was asking what other ones he could watch, and I was like, you can watch Alien versus Predator. Like, it's got more, action. It's not as scary or whatever. And I pulled up the trailer for that. And that was always one I didn't watch it when it came out because I was a teenager and I was like, oh, you're going to get both franchises and make it PG-13 when you combine them. That's bullshit. I'm not watching this. Like, that was very much my attitude. So I didn't watch it until college. And then when I saw it in college, I was like, this movie's fun. Like, it's not, it's not one of the Alien, like, it's not Alien or Predator in terms of quality. But I always thought it was a fun time. So cool. I'm excited to revisit it with Daniel.
And of course, it is by one of our great junk food masters, Paul What Story Anderson.
Don't need a story. What Story Anderson?
So, next movie, that was my last movie at Fantasy Film Fest, and it was the Deathstalker remake. I talked about the original Deathstalker some weeks ago when I watched that in preparation for the remake. When I knew that I would watch the remake at Fantasy Film Fest, I went and watched the original first. And so it was written and directed by Steven Kostanski, who is one of the Astron 6 group. He co-directed The Void. He directed Psycho Gorman. And this is his latest movie. And it was very enjoyable. So I had talked to our friend Bela in Berlin. He always goes to Fantasy Film Fest, and we chat which movies did he see and which am I watching and how do we like them. And he saw Deathstalker before me because in Berlin, their screenings were like a week before Nuremberg, and he was super excited after the movie. He loved it. He said it's perfect. He had watched the original parts 1 and 2 of the original franchise before, and he said to me he's hoping with the remake that they would keep the production value of the first movie, the humor of the second movie, and completely get rid of the misogyny. And after the movie, he said it's perfect. So he got what he wanted out of that movie.
Excellent.
So after this movie, I went on a bit of a Steven Kostanski trip and learned a lot about him, listened to many podcasts with him, and I have not seen Psycho Gorman yet. I did see The Void back then at Fantasy Film Fest as well. Didn't like it that much, but also it's very different from what they did with the other movies with Astron 6, which I have seen none of. But I think Steven Kostanski is a very interesting guy. He does movies, but his more is his day job when he's not making his own movie for no money. He works on other people's movies and TV shows as like a practical effects guy. He worked on The Boys, for example, and on the Andy Muschietti It movies. He does masks and he's like, I mean, you always know, like Rick Baker did the mask. Yeah, well, he did not do that alone. He has guys who make the foam and make the molds and cut shit and Steven Kostanski is one of those guys. So he worked on many movies and shows that you've seen, but you do not know who he is because he's like one of a big group of people. He's one of those hundreds of names in the end credits that did something in the special effects department. But he also does stop motion, and you see that in his movies. So if you watch Deathstalker, he has a stop motion skeleton sword fight like Ray Harryhausen did in Jason and the Argonauts, and something like that. And he does all his rubber makeup effects himself. So so the movie was a lot of fun. And as I said, I enjoyed it and went on a bit of a research trip regarding Steve Kostanski, which I will come back to in a few bullet points, because the next one is The Monkey, the Stephen King adaptation directed by Osgood Perkins. And that was a lot of fun.
Yes.
We watched it at home.
Sitting over here waiting with bated breath. If you,
no, as you know, the little. the little I have seen of Oscar Perkins' movies yet, like 1.5 of his movies or so, they weren't quite for me. But this one was really just a lot of fun, a lot of craziness. I like the camera and the color grading of the movie, and just the zaniness of the whole story, and the gore, although it was mostly digital. But just a fun, entertaining, good time.
I was telling somebody about because I was surprised by how, not necessarily divisive, but I saw within the horror community, I think people didn't quite know what to make of the twin, the brother. But to me, that was one of the funniest, most kind of fun parts of the movie, was the dual role he got to play and how weird his twin is. I mean, to this day, Austin and I still sometimes will be like, the monkey must be vanquished. Like, do that delivery, because he has that on the phone at one point, and it cracked us up. But I remember telling somebody who was curious about it, I was like, look, it's weird. I was like, there's a moment in the movie where an electrical current is in a swimming pool, like something has fallen into a pool. I forget what it is, like a cable or something. And he sees a woman about to dive off the diving board into the pool, and you're like, oh, she's going to get shocked and killed. And he's like, no, like trying to get her to stop doing it. She jumps off the diving board. The moment she hits the water, she explodes. And I was like, if you think that's funny, and if you're like, I want to see that, then odds are good it's going to be a movie for you. But if not, like, I think that's a good litmus test, because if you're like, that sounds so stupid, then you probably won't like the movie. But yeah, I the more I've thought about it since I've gotten away further from watching it, the more I've been like, man, I think we probably owe that movie a little bit more credit, because I think a lot of people kind of wrote it off as this like fun, stupid thing at best. And especially for him, like you said, it's so different than his other films. And there's a humor to it, especially that like he maybe hints at in some of the other ones in dark ways, but not like this. And it also is like kind of poignant about death and like our relationship to death as people. Anyway, I liked it too. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
It's a feature-length Tales from the Crypt episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Then the next movie was a rewatch inspired by one of the podcasts that I listened to with Steve Kostansky, when he talked about this movie and said this is a bit underrated, which I would agree with. Ghostbusters 2, a movie that usually does not come up in the lists of great sequels, but I think it should. If you have not seen Ghostbusters 2 in a while, go and rewatch it without watching Ghostbusters. Just watch number 2 and see if you have a good time, and I will promise you there's a good chance that you will have a great time with this film.
Agreed.
I mean,
I need to do that.
Dave is Gremlins 2 guy. I was pretty certain he's also a Ghostbusters 2
Don't
guy.
say that like it's a bad thing.
No. But, so, again, which movie was it? Oh, yeah. Talking to Bela again a few weeks ago when I talked about Jurassic World Rebirth on this podcast. And I said that with the Jurassic World or the Jurassic Park franchise, there's no argument that, of course, the first one is a masterpiece, and then there are the other ones. And of course, Bela said, I like Lost World a little bit better than Jurassic Park. He's almost like Theron.
That's the second time in 2 weeks that Farron's got a mention on this show, and I'm loving it.
But also, to be clear, like we love that about these guys. Like,
for sure.
It always makes it that I couldn't have been more excited when I saw that Bela gave the Deathstalker remake 5 out of 5 stars, because I was like, okay, this. I might not even like it, but there's definitely something going on. Yeah. Like I'm interested.
Yeah, I then jokingly answered him, yeah, of course you like part 2 better. You're probably one of the guys who thinks Jaws 4 is the best one. And then he said, no, with Jaws, it's actually the first one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Every once in a while.
Then another rewatch, Attack the Block. I mean, we did an episode on the movie.
Yeah.
Fantastic movie. I'm very excited for what they will do with the upcoming sequel. So many years after the original one. I'm very curious where they will go with that one, because this one is just so perfect. Then one of the podcasts with Steve Kosinski that I listen to that I want to mention because that's where our main topic for this here episode came from. The podcast is called Murmurs from the Morgue, and it's an episode on horror anime with Steven Kostanski, who says on the podcast himself he's not a huge anime expert. I don't know why they invited him for the podcast. So it's the regular host for the podcast. Then they have a host from another horror podcast as a guest, and Steve Kostanski, and they talk about horror anime. And I thought it was pretty interesting. And that's where I learned about Roujin Z, because in the introduction, Kostanski talks about, well, as a kid, he watched things on TV, and from time to time, he switched over to a channel where they played anime, and so he saw bits of some things that, as a smaller child, disturbed him. And there's this one anime from my childhood. I only saw a scene from it, but it's haunted me ever since. I do not know what it is. Maybe one of your listeners knows. And he describes a scene, and the other guy on the podcast says, yeah, that's Roujin Z.
That's awesome.
And then I looked it up, and I thought, let's do an episode on it. Okay, that was that one. Then, go ahead.
No. I've interjected with too many things. Keep going.
Another podcast that I discovered like a week ago or so while I was home now, and listened to several episodes. It's called Camp Kaiju, monster movie podcast. Two guys from Minnesota who do a podcast on monster movies. That's it. And it's very enjoyable. Very likable guys. Good to listen to. As I tried to. I looked through the releases. The podcast started in 2021. It seems like one of the guys started the podcast, and then from time to time he had guests on, and then the other guy just became a constant co-host. I think that's how it went. It's what it seems to me like. They do a lot of kaiju movies, but also just any horror movie with a bit of some, if similar to us. If they can justify it for themselves that it's the movie has a monster, they talk about it. They talk about Jaws and everything with a bit of a monster tint to it, and like that one. And then I've gone back and picked up my Hellboy comics again. Some years ago, I started Hellboy from the beginning, but got distracted as always halfway through. And this week I have these big library editions. I picked up Volume 4, which is, I believe, where I left off after Volume 3. So now I'm something like halfway through Volume 4, and having not read Hellboy comics in a while, it's. I think whenever you pick up a Hellboy comic, it's probably every time the same effect, that you're just baffled how well done these comics are and how great the storytelling in these short stories is. How Mignola is able to just. I read this story. I think it's called like the Troll Witch or something like that in Volume 4, and it's Hellboy is on his way to defeat some trolls, and he visits this witch, and his actual quest of defeating these trolls is completely in the background. So I just like the form of the story, where the protagonist barely does anything in the story, and on his way to his actual quest, he has this side quest where he visits this witch, and then she tells her story, and that becomes the actual story that you are reading as the reader. And then she gives him this item, in this case a spoon, that he then puts in front of a cave where the trolls go, and the trolls cannot enter the cave, and the sun comes up and they turn to stone, and that happens in more or less the last like 2 or 3 panels. But just this reading experience of the actual adventure is not the story that you're reading. It's not even it's when you're getting told the story from the perspective of one of the side characters of the story, because that becomes the main story. And similarly to what Gaiman did in Sandman, where you have the adventures where Dream is the actual protagonist, and then you have these other adventures where he's just a side character, and the side characters in his story become the main characters in the story that you're reading. And then, of course, all the artists that worked on Hellboy are just fantastic. Mignola himself is above any criticism when it comes to the layout of his pages and his design sense, and it's amazing. If you have never read any Hellboy comics, just pick any up.
Yeah, I co-sign that 1,000,000%, and I'm glad you mentioned the writing, because I think that was one of the big surprises for me at the beginning, and then kind of consistently over the years. Is I loved his art so much. I was drawn to the art. I mean, I saw the movie first, obviously. We've talked about this a bunch on the show and past episodes, and that's what pulled me in. So there was a visual aspect, and there still was a character and story aspect, but I think I just expected the writing to be not bad, but just kind of like less of a focus. And you get in there and realize, like, Mignola loves storytelling on every level and is a huge reader and is a huge fan of mythology and folklore, and he's constantly, adapting. Like, one of the first Hellboy stories I ever read, I bought a trade paperback in the mall in Brazil after I saw the movie, and it was a Japanese folklore tale where there's a bunch of heads that are like flying around in the air, and Mignola talks about it in the back, like, oh yeah, I read this Japanese folklore about these heads that fly around. I thought that was cool, so I wanted to make a story. Like that's all it took. But then he doesn't just like you described with the Troll Witch thing. Like, it could have so easily just been a short where Hellboy fights some trolls, and Mignola's done that before in other stories and stuff too. But he opts to go somewhere deeper. Like, yeah, I'm gonna shut the fuck up since it's Hellboy. I could talk forever, but amazing series.
And now that's it from me.
Alrighty.
I guess that's me then.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that hasn't gone yet, so it must be me.
I said alrighty over him saying Dave, throwing it to you. I don't think you heard it.
Apologies.
That's my bad.
There's really not much for me to talk about this week. I've not had much to watch at all this week because I stopped watching WWE a couple of weeks ago, so that's not a thing anymore. And so I could comment on the horrors of what they're doing with where they're taking all of their shows, but I won't, because fuck them. Instead, I'm going to talk about very briefly a slight disappointment that I had regarding Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, my favourite subject, and everyone else's least favourite is back for another week. So the campaign that we're going to be starting tomorrow is no longer a 2024 campaign. It's now a 5e campaign. This comes 2 weeks after I bought the 2024 Player's Handbook. You guys already know about this because we talked about it in the in the chat. It's fine because I went on D&D Beyond, and it turns out that the problems that I have with creating a 2024 character don't really exist where it comes to a 2014 5e character, because everything is unlocked. So I was able to put together a character fairly quickly, fairly easily. I'm pretty disappointed because, as things stand, I didn't realise this. 5e doesn't, in the base rule set, allow for you to play as a Goliath. That's kind of a big part of the character that I was putting together. So I've had to make things work as best as I can. So now I'm a half orc. We'll see how it goes. But the first play will be tomorrow. I don't know if I don't think anyone has any interest in me doing a weekly update on how things are going with that. So this will probably be the last I talk about it for a while. But yeah, a little bit of a disappointment. But thankfully, 5e rules are plentiful on the internet. You helped me find some, David. Archive.org, our friends over at Archive, wonderful resource, especially if you're looking for PDF copies of older books that are no longer the current iterations. Essentially, kind of like the literary equivalent of abandonware. So from that point of view,
and they're readily available at used bookstores and gaming shops across the country, but not. I say readily available. It feels like you see them everywhere, but then when you have to find the one you're looking for, then it's suddenly much harder. So that's
also,
why, PDFs are usually easier.
Yeah, I feel like America and I would imagine to an extent Germany as well. Probably a little bit easier to find shops like that now. In the UK, it feels like all of the independent bookshops and all the secondhand bookshops, they've just dried up. I don't know where the nearest one is to me. I'll probably look up online later and there'll be one 5 minutes down the road. That just shows how aware I am of my surroundings these days. But it would be something that I would be interested in picking up secondhand if the price was right. The problem is that like you can get it on Amazon for like £21. So ideally I would want to pick up if I was going to pick up a secondhand copy, I'd want it to be less than that. But at the moment, the only place I found secondhand copies is eBay, and the starting price is like 20 quid. So it's not really worth it once you pay the packaging. You may as well buy a new one and give a little bit more money to the actual makers of the book, even though it's a lot smaller and not supporting booksellers in the same way as going to Forbidden Planet and paying £45 for the same book would be. But I suppose that's the difference between brick and mortar and the evil Saros or Soros company.
You mean Bezos?
Bezos, yeah. Why am I saying Soros?
George Soros is someone different.
It's all the fucking same.
I was
to
like,
me.
this
They're
must
all,
be a British person I don't
they're
know.
all they're all evil billionaires. I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
I'm showing them too much respect by getting their names right.
I don't know a lot about George Soros. Only that is the one that the right wing always pulls out as the evil Jewish billionaire. So
if that's
I don't want to confuse him with Jeff Bezos.
No, that's fair enough then. I wasn't aware. I'm just like rich person, 4 letters, kind of sounds like the same name. Fine, that's him probably. That's on me. Apologies. So the one thing that I did want to talk about this week that is actually horror related that people might find interesting is I praise the algorithm. Talking about evil billionaires and things like that. Google, or more precisely YouTube, have done it again. I was just listening to a random playlist of heavy metal on YouTube one night, and a song came on that I'd never heard before. I'd never heard of the artist before, and I immediately was like, "Oh, this sounds really good." And it turns out they've been around for like 25 years at this point. It's a band called The Birthday Massacre. I don't know if either of you are familiar with these guys.
Think so. Doesn't sound familiar.
Okay.
I know the name.
You know the name. Awesome. They're a really interesting kind of goth rock synth heavy band from the early 2000s who still make music today. They've got a thing for the colour purple, not the movie, the colour. They just they make some really interesting music. They've got a female lead singer, so that's always interesting when you find a rock band that has a female vocalist, because it has, even today, I would say it's vastly, the majority of bands are male vocal centric. There are a lot more female band led bands now, especially if you look at like Linkin Park, like they retooled and came back with a female vocalist. But you know, there's plenty out there these days. It's not like the days of Evanescence when it was like, well, it was either Amy Lee or nothing in the mainstream. But yeah, they've got some really cool songs. The one that turned me onto them originally was called Blue. They had like a re-finished video that was SD, and they updid it to HD. I don't know if they just went back to the original print and got a better copy of it, or more likely they used some kind of upscaling to sharpen the image. But it's a very kind of cool and unsettling, very horror-coded music video, like a woman kind of dressed in kind of like younger clothing, kind of like little girl kind of thing, in a room full of like dolls and like really unsettling China doll faces and things like that. And she finds a hole in the carpet, and there's like a maze under there, so she starts tracing a route to the center of the maze, and she gets to the center of the maze and she pulls a grate up, and there's just this like black goopy liquid in there, and she goes elbows deep into it to try and find what's underneath. And there's like an alternate world, and she gets hold of like a doll on the other side and pulls it through, and its head comes off, and then the end of the video she's laying there and her head's come off, and it's just really disturbing. I would absolutely recommend that people check it out. It's a really cool music video, and they didn't do too many music videos in the kind of classic MTV or Kerrang style where it's like a proper high production video trying to tell a story. A lot of their videos seem to be either live performances or fan-made videos. But I've gone on a bit of a binge since then, and songs like Sleep Tonight and Red Stars, I think it's called, There's a whole album that they basically redid a lot of their songs, edited them, and kind of brought them up to a modern standard. That one is called Violet. It's got a song on it called, I think it's called Video Kid. It's got a kind of a video game inspired sound to it. The vocals are a little bit muffled on it, even on the redo. But I think it's a fun song to listen to, especially if you can find the live version. That seems to be probably the one with the clearest lyrics, ironically, because anyone that's been to a live gig will know that the struggle is real where it comes to getting the audio of the singer's vocals to come through over the din of all of the instruments. Small venues seem to struggle with that a lot more than the big venues do, at least in my personal opinion and experience. Not that is that varied. But yeah, so big recommendation for the Birthday Massacre, a band who I wish I'd known about sooner. They were around in the heyday when I was really into all of my alt-rock stuff, and I'm annoyed that I only found them now, but I'm also really happy that I found them now, because there's a whole back catalogue of music that I'm discovering now. Like, there's dozens of albums that these guys have made. And if I'm
feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm going to just take my time, just one album at a time, just experiencing all of this stuff. If I remember correctly, they formed the band in London, Ontario, Canada. So they're a Canadian goth synth band that were formed in London, of all places. So not the London, a London. So yeah, there we go. Not much to talk about this week, but I somehow managed to spin it out for longer than anyone wanted to listen to it. So let's crack on.
Sounds good. All right. Let's pivot into our movie of the week. As we mentioned earlier, I'm just going to do the basic Wikipedia info here, and then I will... Well, I don't know. Do you need to intro it more, Andi? You kind of set it up earlier. I started to say you could intro it. But...
that's enough.
Okay. So Roujin Z, if you are not even attempting to pronounce it in the proper Japanese way, Roujin Z is my understanding, if you're trying to pronounce it correctly. 1991 Japanese anime science fiction action thriller film, directed by Hiroyuki Kitakubo and written by Katsuhiro Otomo, the man we've talked about on this podcast, I'm sure dozens of times over the years, but primarily we did an episode at one point over Domu, A Child's Dream, fantastic manga that he did before Akira. And then, yeah, there's a lot of... So when Andi first sent this to us and suggested it as a film that we could do on the show, I'm trying to scroll back and find how exactly you described it. Here we go. Katsuhiro Otomo provided the film's story and screenplay. Satoshi Kon acted as the film's art director and set designer. I think you pulled that from Wikipedia. I'm not quoting you.
Yeah, exactly. I just was about to say that. It's not how I phrased it. I just copied it from Wikipedia.
As I was reading it, I was like, I could have just stayed on the Wikipedia article and scrolled down. But Otomo and then Satoshi Kon. And honestly, tons of, relatively speaking, other people that went on to do pretty massive stuff. Kitakubo in particular, one of our earliest episodes on the podcast was a film that he did, the Blood the Last Vampire, the original. I think it was classified as an OVA.
Episode 3, I think we did. Yeah,
it was early.
Yeah. I think it's like a 60-minute or 67-minute movie.
It's even shorter. I just pulled it up. 48 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, damn. Yeah, okay.
So, yeah. But, we loved it from what I remember. We talked about it quite a bit, and surprisingly great, like, Halloween movie, too, since it's set at Halloween. So, but crazy just amount of just stacked talent on this thing. I had never heard of this before. Maybe I had clicked on it at some point looking through, some of the things Otomo's worked on and was vaguely aware, but this was, totally brand new. I had no idea what it was about. When you see the poster on Wikipedia, it is not indicative of what the movie is. It's a girl on a moped, which is not what the movie's about. So let's get into our overall thoughts. I guess just kind of an overall sort of thing. So the very first beginning part in the plot section here on Wikipedia sums it up fairly nice. So it's set in early 21st century Japan. Quote, a group of scientists and hospital administrators under direction of the Ministry of Public Welfare are led by lead programmer Mr. Hasegawa have developed the Z1 or Z001, a computerized hospital bed with robotic features. It takes complete care of the patient. It can dispense food and medicine, remove excretory waste, bathe and exercise the patient laying within its frame, and it's driven by its own built-in nuclear power reactor. So we follow the first, quote unquote volunteer, this 87-year-old guy who was before the bed being cared by sort of our protagonist, young girl named I forgot her name, Haruko.
Yeah.
The movie movie goes from there. I mean, this thing is much more powerful than they originally think. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Much more than just a girl on a moped wearing some Nike shoes, which is what the cover has or the poster rather. But what did we think of this overall? Andi, I'm going to throw it to you first. What did you think of Roujin Z?
I thought it was very good. I really liked the movie. I thought the music was great. The animation was great. The whole pacing, the whole rhythm of the film was really well done. I thought I was impressed from the start, just the opening where it cuts back and forth between this old man lying in his room crying for help or for his helper, and then the camera cuts back out into the streets where we see and hear the noises of a train going, and then back into the room where you only hear the old man yelling. And then you hear the outside again, the liveliness of the outside, and the loneliness of the inside of this old man who can't move and who is in need of someone helping him just in his daily life. And it immediately sets the stage for the story of this invention of this bed that is there to further public welfare and help the elderly. And that is a very real problem in Japan now, way more so than even back then, over 30 years ago when this film was made. I just saw numbers today where 30% of the Japanese population are elderly. In the 80s, it was 10%.
Oh, wow.
Then in 2005, it was 20%. And now it's 30%, and that's as I said, a very real problem that Japan is dealing with. They have too few young people, I believe Japan might have the oldest population in the world. Maybe it's not number one, but it's definitely up there somewhere. And so I find it very interesting that already more than 30 years ago they made this movie addressing this very problem when it wasn't even as problematic as it is today. And so this movie was, I think it had funny moments. This old elderly hacker group was a very, very fun addition to the cast and to the movie.
Yeah.
The protagonist was very likable, I think. And then this combination of we're telling a story that is based in a very real social problem, but then we have two robots fighting. This is Dan Harmon's Why Remove the King Kong. we have this very dramatic story, sad story. It is about the loneliness of the elderly. It is about death. David mentioned our relationship to death when we talked about the monkey earlier in this episode. It is about this widower who misses his wife, and he kind of gets his wife back for a while, but in the in the form of an electrical bed, in the form of a computer, of a robot, and and in the end of the Daibutsu from Kamakura, the giant sitting Buddha. The movie ends up at the beach of Kamakura. I was there. I was at that beach. I did visit that Daibutsu, this giant sitting Buddha, like 2.5 years ago. I'm obsessed with these giant Buddhas in Japan. I've had the luck of visiting 3 now, and
nice.
every time I see these, I'm humbled. They are giant and peaceful, and it's fantastic. And the one in Kamakura, it's not too far from Tokyo. It's like a day trip you can easily do. So when that showed up in the end, when the deceased wife showed up and having transformed this giant Buddha and all this other crap into this big mecha of sorts, was a fun ending. And so I was really impressed with the movie. I liked it a lot, and I have more about it to say, more to say about it. But first, Dave, you had mentioned that you had at some point seen this movie before. So
yeah,
what is your impression now, having it seen again?
I still feel the same way I did the first time round. I really enjoyed it. I think it's got an awful lot of stuff to say, and it says it really well. One thing that I would like to point out for our listeners, anyone that wants to watch it, is please, for the love of God, watch the subtitled version. Don't go anywhere near the dub.
I forgot to go back and look at the dub after you told us that, because I hadn't watched it yet, and so I just watched the Japanese subtitled version.
If you want a good illustration of why I said sub over dub in this instance, just read the Wikipedia plot entry all the way through and tell me if that's the same film that we watched. Because it's not. It's genuinely not. Like they attribute the hacking group all of the credit for how the movie ends up, which I don't remember being the case. They take all of the agency away from the Haru simulation, which completely changes the way that the movie plays out in my mind, and robs the bed of any agency. It's horrendous. Like Manga Entertainment, which, for those who aren't aware, was a British company that used to do a lot of dubbing back in the 90s. They are undoubtedly responsible for the rapid growth of anime in the UK and quite possibly a lot of the rest of the Western world as well. But it's a huge double-edged sword, because they were also largely responsible for some of the largest acts of bastardization that you will ever see in story making. They often adopted a practice of making the script fit the lips and not the story being told. Whatever they get right in the dub version of this is more accident than anything else. I watched it halfway through. I watched it 1.5 times today. I watched it first in the proper subtitled version, and then the second time halfway through I watched the dub. And just to be sure that what I said to you guys held up, because literally, like, when I sent you that message the other night saying please avoid the dub, it was after watching the first 10 minutes of it and just knowing in my soul, from the number of Manga Entertainment anime that I've watched over the years, that this is another one of those where they will basically throw as much toilet humour and swearing in as possible to make it feel adult, because they can't get through their heads that anime might be an adult enough thing already. They didn't trust it early on to be clever enough and nuanced enough for an adult audience to watch it, understand it, and respect it, without giving it extra layers of quote-unquote adult themes. And their childlike understanding of adult themes was swearing and toilet humour. And that's literally all that they threw at it. So genuinely, like, they changed a few of the scenes that I watched in the dub, completely changed the tone of the scene. They were throwing in, they had this love, whoever the scriptwriter was, they had a real love for taking long terms and then shortening them to, like, you know, what is it where you take the first letter of everything and then you make a word out of it? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Like an acronym?
An acronym, yeah. So they had like they had a whole list of these acronyms, and then right at the end, the guy gets cut off by somebody coming through the door, and he's about to say shit, basically. Like, he was like the Society for Health and Institutional something or other, and he said, or as we like to call it, shit, and then they get cut off. It's just so juvenile, and it really, genuinely, like, I'm lucky that when I decided to watch this film for the first time, it was because of the algorithm on YouTube again. All hail the algorithm, and it was the subtitled version that I was given, and I'm so happy because translated correctly and with the right context for everything that you see on screen, this is a brilliant piece of storytelling. It's an original piece. I think that's something that should be mentioned. Written by Katsuhiro Otomo, but specifically written for the screen. It's not based on an original work. It's a completely original piece, fully realised and brought to screen by APPP and the Roujin Z. They have like commissions that they set up when they're making films. And that's essentially like the group of companies that came together to make it. So Sony Music Entertainment Japan were involved. That's why all of the TVs are Sony TVs. TV Asahi, Movic Co. And the Television Incorporated. So like all of those companies were involved in the making of it. And it's got a lot of interesting and very important things to say, not just about the aging population of Japan, but also about the way that companies will try to sneak military technology developments in through making them up as something else, like using them for medical uses or whatever. I could not tell you who it was that said it because my memory is trash, but I remember hearing people saying previously that most of the big advances in technology of the 20th and 21st century came about because they were things that were developed for a military purpose and just so happened to have uses in everyday life. This is kind of an example of that. I saw someone somewhere say that this is also an example of kind of the right wing of Japanese politics trying to remilitarize the country. Something which they recently did succeed in doing, at least at a political level. I believe there was a vote which passed a ruling that said that Japan could actually have an army instead of a defense force for the first time since the Second World War. That is just off the top of my head. I would have to go and check that for sure to see that it passed through whatever else it needed to, but I believe that is correct. I love this story. I love the humor of it. It's pure Otomo. Like, it feels like Akira, just in a slightly more recognizable time span. The funny thing is, when this was suggested and then I reminded myself of what the main plot point of this movie was, I thought to myself, has Andy suggested this because of Donald Trump and his Med-Bed thing that came out recently, where he was talking about, we're going to have these beds and they're going to do everything for you, and it's like somebody pointed out, it's like, no, this is science fiction. Like, he'll believe anything that people tell him. And I immediately thought, someone probably watched Roujin the night before and was like, hey, just throw this out there. This is a great idea. I had no idea about the podcast that brought it up or anything like that, but I'm really happy that Andy suggested that we watch this because I enjoyed watching it the first time round. I never thought of suggesting it for this show because I considered it to be more of a science fiction story than horror, but I'm very happy to bend the rules to get this in because I've really enjoyed watching it again. David, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, echo pretty much what you guys said. I really enjoyed it as well. I mean, it's taken me, years to realize this since I didn't grow up necessarily watching anime other than, those like pockets of cartoons that I didn't realize were anime, when I was a kid, like Speed Racer, for
Dragon
example,
Ball
was probably one of the early ones. Yeah. And then Pokemon later on was probably the biggest one for me, younger. The original Dragon Ball for sure. I knew about Akira and stuff like that, it wasn't until I've, having seen, again, not nearly as much as a lot of other people, but enough to realize, man, I love this era of animation. Like, I think it looks so good.
Yeah.
It's not that it's flawless. In fact, there's definite, I don't want to call them flaws, but there's definite like seams you can see sometimes.
Yeah.
But it also, I don't know if if it's something, I thought about this a lot when I was watching it. Like, is this something that back then was, noticeable, or people could see in the similar way I'm seeing, or is it, like, was it a time thing, or was it just them leaning into the aesthetic? Because the choices, even if they don't look like the most expensive animation ever, always feel right. Like, even establishing shots where they're just like static images of buildings or streets or whatever, there's a cohesiveness to all of it too. I mean, the character designs, like the just like the faces, like everything about it, I just love. I mean, every frame of it, there's something about that's just so much fun to watch and see, and has that feel to it that I've been watching a lot of Dragon Ball, as I've mentioned in the past with Daniel, and that's one thing that, like, there's the newest Dragon Ball movie, Dragon Ball Superhero, is they did it in like a CG sort of style, which when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I hate this, I'm never going to watch this movie. I've since watched a trailer for it and read more about it, and people said similar stuff, which is like, at first it's kind of disorienting, but it ends up being really, really cool, and the animation's awesome. So, being able to appreciate and look at different types of animation, is something that I've worked on and built. But there's no denying, when I see a clip from Dragon Ball or from one of the old movies from the 90s or like the late 80s, there is part of me that's just like, that's what I like. That's the look that I'm most drawn to, for sure. And this has that. I mean, this has that era and vibe to it. I mean, I'm basically Chris Farley show-esque observations. I just love everything about the choices that they made in telling the story, the way that they told it, and what it was, because I mean, Andi summed it up perfectly. It's the Dan Harmon thing, why take out the King Kong part? Like, it has all of this stuff while also having a sentient nuclear powered hospital bed that's also very mobile, and it's just so many aspects. I mean, I think I haven't read or seen a ton of Otomo stuff. I still haven't read Akira. I've only seen the film. I've read Domu, obviously, but the stuff that I have interacted with, it feels like that there's a through line there where it's like there's always like 2 or 3 more things going on than what you would expect. It's a story that could very just easily be about this old guy trapped in a bed and this younger nurse student trying to help save him. But then you have the hacker group, and you've got the military aspect, you've got the stuff with his wife, and like there's all these added extra
one thing. Let me add one
Yeah.
thing to that to this list. We have the friend who desperately wants to be with the protagonist, but she doesn't want him.
Yeah.
And he has sex with the other girl
Yeah.
in the middle of the movie,
Yeah.
but still longing for the protagonist at the end of the movie and trying to get to her. I mean, that has nothing to do with the main story of this movie, but it's in there. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not even adding in the stuff you guys already mentioned too, with all the social commentary stuff, whether it's the military stuff or especially the elderly and care and all that. And I mean, that was an aspect I definitely didn't know until you guys had mentioned it was still a thing, but not even still a thing, even worse state than where it was back then. So yeah, this is one of those things that feels so specifically like, I think in a similar way that if I watch, a Jordan Peele horror movie, for example, I'm picking him at random because he'll do social stuff and I'm a fan of his. There will be something about it that it's just like, this is just so specifically, this American, like specifically Black American lens that is being told in this particular story. And in a similar way, this hits me where it's like, this feels so much like a story that maybe not only Japan could have told, but like there's definitely a connection and a reason. It's not just some made up sci-fi bullshit. There's some, and I love made up sci-fi bullshit, to be clear, but there's a core sort of thing happening there. Again, I'm just basically extrapolating the King Kong thing, but
you're right, because I think if I can draw a parallel to something I'm very well placed to talk about, the reason that some of the best episodes of Star Trek work is because they take things that we deal with today and they add a sheen of space age modernity about it. But at
Twilight
its heart,
Zone, same thing.
Yeah. At its heart, it's still very much an issue that you deal with now, whether it's being transgender, which there's an episode, that wonderful episode of Star Trek Next Generation, actually, that deals with the concept of being neither one nor the other gender. Racism, the original season of Star Trek, didn't necessarily cover itself in a lot of glory because they were very ham-fisted with the way they did it, but they had like an episode with the characters that were like left half white, right half black, and then the other character was left half black, right half white, and they hated each other. And it just like highlighted the absurdity of racism. And, this movie takes something very serious, which has become even more serious in our modern time, and puts a massive lens over it, and not only talks about the problems that it will bring in terms of economic issues and social issues, but it also dials down on a much more personal level to how demeaning it is. And believe me, I've had some experience of this in recent years, so I kind of know what I'm talking about here. To be someone of advanced age who can't do everything for yourself, and so someone else has to do it for you, and to have that laid bare on a stage, in front of people you don't know, with television cameras and all this stuff. You're stripped naked, you're washed, you're fed, you're forced to do exercises. You have your manhood exposed to the world. You have a vacuum cleaner attached to your genitals so that you can go to the toilet. And you're supposed to be thankful for this.
Right.
It's like,
well, that's one of my favorite like moments in the movie in terms of the just kind of like boiling down. One of the central themes is I keep forgetting her name. Hanako? Is that it?
Haruko.
Haruko. She shows up at that demonstration. She's at that demonstration, and she's like, what about there's no love.
No, she puts the humanity back into it. Because at that point, I'm just as guilty as everyone else. I thought it was a funny scene,
Yeah.
And then she turns up and she's like, yeah, but, he needs love. And then you're reminded this isn't just a floor model demonstration of the newest technology. It's a human being in a moment of severe need. And that's ultimately what she was providing. I mean, she was providing all the other things that the machine covers too, but then I think it's a great moment for her character, but then also the dude's response to it is, man, it just unfortunately felt so prescient, and just how shithead rich corporate. Let's just spin
whatever
this into what we need to say to sell it.
Don't push back. Acknowledge, of course, like nothing can replace the love of a family, but this will make it even easier for the family, and it's spinning it so that there's not an immediate you're trying to make it look like, oh, we're both on the same page here.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, this dude's strapped to a nuclear reactor essentially. So
I couldn't believe it when they said that. I forgot. It's been a while since I watched it the first time. When they mentioned it's driven by a nuclear reactor, I was like, oh shit, yeah. Oh fuck.
And the only other thing I'll say, just kind of my overall quick thoughts that I really like. You guys have already touched on it too. The humor, I thought the humor was great in it. There's quite a bit of it. Like, it doesn't, not that it's like a laugh a minute comedy, but there's more than I expected, and I thought for the most part it was all really good. One of my favorite jokes in the whole movie is when her and her friends sneak into where the bed is. And in the hospital, and the dude shows up.
Yep.
And in that moment, I noticed, like, she's standing there completely caught off guard because the military guy shows up. And then the friends are gone. And I was like, oh, shit, they just left her. They abandoned her. And then there's this shot of the old man in the bed with his arms out, like Christ, basically, like T-posing in this bed. And it's odd, but I still didn't think about it. And they pulled the sheet off, and all of the friends are hiding, one arm out, one arm out. It's such a funny, and it's all done like as there's dialogue happening, as there's other conversation going on. So it's like a great visual, sort of joke happening underneath all of the storytelling and everything else, which again, similarly to like the thing you mentioned earlier, him sleeping with the other girl in the middle of the movie, like there's a lot of that sort of, it's not a dense story, but again, it's just like I repeat this so much, it's like they went way harder than a lot of people would have, in all good ways, I think.
I think it definitely packs a lot in without ever making the film feel like it's overly dense. Because it all feels very natural how her interactions with her friends play out. The unrequited love story with Maeda, I think is his name. You know, and then also you've got the entire story of the sentient bed and how he's missing his wife Haru, and it even brings up little things like audio memory. You know, like he drifts off in a dream and he hears that song playing and thinks about a trip that he went on, his wife and his daughter to the beach, and then that kind of plays back into when he goes past the pachinko parlor and that song is playing again, and so he finds his way in there and absolutely wreaks havoc. So many pachinko balls falling from the ceiling in that scene. Like, that must have been fun to animate. But yeah, I didn't think it was overly packed for a film that had as much going on as it did. And I think that speaks to the filmmakers, to Otomo as a writer, to Kitsukubo as a director, for being able to pace it out so well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the movie isn't even that long.
No, 84 minutes. It's nearly perfect.
Yeah. But it's one of those movies that when it gets going, it goes till the end. There's not really a lull in the movie, and I was even surprised that it didn't stop at the beach when we have that moment when everything at the beach is resolved and we have this sundown shot, that where the movie could have ended.
Yeah.
And then there was more, and I was curious, what more are they going to tell us? And you have this moment when this guy from the public welfare service is confronted by journalists and denies everything, and everything is being covered up. And the young protagonists witness that, and you feel you know that from other movies when there's this huge thing happening and the government is covering everything up. Yeah, and then this Daibutsu mecha shows up and very obviously this cannot be covered up. there is something weird going on. Although it's still a little bit. So we hear these screams at the end when the I don't know if the screen goes white.
Yeah.
And we do not really see what's happening. We only hear these screams. So we don't quite know what's happening there.
I like to assume that that's other people in the hospital, not the people that are praying to Buddha right there. You know, like they know what's going on. It's going to reach in and take the husband off to go to the beach.
I think so too.
Yeah, like that feels like a little bit too nihilistic of an ending for it to like wreck the place so badly that the people that were praying then end up screaming for their lives.
That's what I thought too. I wanted to be a more positive ending. I wanted to be more. They scream of surprise, but not of pain.
The cat
definitely.
as well. I did want to bring up the cat very briefly because the cat does play a very important part. Which like when they first go back home and the bed climbs the stairs, which is a funny enough scene in itself. The cat jumps in and just finds its way into like a little nook or cranny of the bed and is there for the rest of the movie. Does not shift. But there's a wonderful bit of comedy when they first pick him up from his home and they take him away, where very unfairly he hasn't got a say in it. It's his next of kin, his family, who have said, oh yeah, you can do that with him because I guess it's a free ride for them. But they take him, and then the cat gets thrown back into frame. Like, no, you're not coming with us. And it's just it's completely silent. There's no dialogue for the cat being thrown back in. but it's just a nice little visual joke of like, no, you stay here. And I did enjoy that. But then for the cat to be such an important part of that final scene, the fact that it runs off with the computer chip and clearly it finds itself another power source to start kind of putting itself back together. And of course that leads you into the whole conversation about the bed and whether or not it's sentient, whether it takes memories from Takazawa and recreates the wife from that, plus the voice print that it got apparently from a photo, which
that was a little bit weird.
That's a bit. Can
you recreate the voice of this person from this photograph?
That's
how?
Yeah, exactly. I
maybe from the bone structure and
maybe. Yeah, I know that Sony right now have technology where you can take a photo of your ears and they will design a soundstage specifically designed for your ears to get the best out of your listening experience. You can do that on like PlayStation 5 and stuff like that. So maybe the next step is to take a photo of your throat and they can work out from your Adam's apple or lack thereof as to what your voice might sound like.
We've all seen that Tutankhamun or whatever it is, mommy video, right, where they recreate. So we've got that technology.
They took some risks with that one as well.
That's where the movie is very close to current AI discussions. So again, over 30 years ago, but in many ways very applicable to today, that AI discussion, but also the military versus public welfare discussion, because we see that in Germany, we see that in other countries where after decades of demilitarizing, we are at a point where we're discussing the draft again, which we got rid of years ago, and where we're getting money from somewhere, we're getting into debt to rebuild our military and all the disarmament that was going on after the Cold War. We now have to undo and get militarized again, because suddenly there's Russian drones showing up over Poland and over Estonia and things like that. Yeah. And of course, the first thing where you save money is you get rid of services for the ones that need it, that for the elderly, for the sick, for the unemployed, and things like that. You never go touch the rich guy's money. No, you take it from the poorer folk. And I thought that this moment or this topic in this movie where it turns out, this bed that was supposedly there to help the elderly and to be for public welfare, and I thought it was very interesting that this I don't know if it was a ministry or whatever, this public welfare service was it was a proper character in the movie, that this was very important, a very important topic in the movie. And then turns out this bed is actually a military experiment, because that's how these things turn out, of course. So again, 1991, Germany had just reunited. The Soviet Union was crumbling. The Cold War was coming to an end. But assuming Otomo may have had this idea or written the story a bit earlier, even before this power shift happening, before the Eastern Bloc crumbling, and now we find us in a very similar situation again, from back in the 80s, and so the the movie from its message and from the topics that it's discussing, very topical to today, which is kind of sad, actually.
Unfortunately, I think there are aspects of history which are almost unavoidably cyclical. I don't subscribe to some of the worst things being unavoidable, but I do think that there is a slightly cyclical nature to certain things in the world. That's a discussion for a far more intellectual podcast than the one that we're having here. Maybe I'm doing us down. I don't know. The weird thing is, like, when I'm looking at the relationship between the government health official and the guy who works for the company that apparently was developing the computer, although it then turns out that it was actually brought in from the Pentagon. So you've got Mr. Terada, who is the government official, and Hasegawa is the actual kind of like big bad, for want of a better expression for him. It felt like a slight cop-out that they didn't have Terada be completely in on what was going on. Because as a character, like, yes, he's definitely like one to cover stuff up, and he's got no problem in being complicit in these things once he knows he's involved. But you can kind of make the argument that at the beginning of the movie, he does actually have like the best interests of Japan in mind when developing the Z-bed, because like he hasn't got anything else to gain outside of maybe an aspect of legacy, the fact that he can say, yeah, I was the guy that solved the social care crisis in Japan. But like he wasn't knowingly pushing this into every home on the basis of, well, we're basically just developing the control systems for our version of Tachikomas. It was Hasegawa that was all that. Another movie might have combined those two characters and had the head of the health ministry be kind of like a paid goon for a foreign investor who was developing a 6th generation computer that was able to do all of this stuff. I do find it interesting what you were saying about AI, though, because I feel like the Haru character, the interactive bed, the sentient bed, I definitely feel as though how, apart from how they came up with the voice, which is very weird, as we've talked about, I feel like that character is probably, despite the fact that it isn't human, one of the most human characters in the whole piece. Because ultimately, it or she, depending on how you want to treat the sentient creation of his ex-wife, I say ex-wife, is his departed wife. She's only ever interested in Takazawa's well-being, to the point that, and this is where the divergence between the dub and the sub really becomes obvious. She does everything she can to protect him, including sacrificing herself, giving him over to Terada and Haruko and saying, please look after him. And then essentially going on a mission of self-sacrifice to try and take out this combat version of the Z001. And it's that moment of self-sacrifice which really kind of cements that character as like the most human one for me. Because although Haruko is doing everything that she can to help Takazawa, she doesn't necessarily have the power to do so in the way that this bed does. I don't know. It's verbal diarrhea at this point. I'm just speaking whatever comes into my head. I don't know if any of it is fully formed thoughts or not.
I think it makes absolute sense, because the movie portrays the artificial Haru as pretty much an equivalent to the living Haru. So there's no malicious aspect to the AI once the quote unquote spirit of the deceased wife takes over. So that's I think if I hear that correctly, that's how you interpret that she's more of one of the more human characters in the movie. So I absolutely agree. You could write that story differently, where the AI is more malicious. That's not the case here. Absolutely, that's true. Because I mean, they introduce the the antagonist to the, at that point, friendly bed in the military version of that device, where it isn't a bed anymore, where it's like
it's a
battle
Tachikoma.
robot.
It's a four-legged spider thingy.
Yeah, well, they call it the Alpha.
The Alpha, that's right.
In the movie. So the bed that at some earlier in the movie was more of a threat, because of its lack of humanity, in the sense that Haruku's saying, "Where is the love in tending to the elderly?" This bed does not have that. But when, I guess it is actually the AI impersonating the wife to the extent that it actually
believes that
is accepted as the wife.
Yeah,
that's where that device becomes human in a sense, gets a sense of humanity. But then we, introduce the Alpha as the absolute counterpart, in the sense there's no humanity at all. This thing is for killing. As Pete Hex have said this week, killing people is your job. Killing people is your living, is how you make a living. Wonderful. That's the times that we're living in. Anyway, so a few things that I wanted to I wrote down while you guys were talking that I wanted to mention or comment on. The first thing that I wrote down that we haven't mentioned yet, one of my favorite credits that I've ever seen in an opening credit is calligraphy by Katsuhiro Otomo.
I was going to bring this
cool.
up.
Yeah.
we see the title of the movie written out with a brush in Japanese calligraphy, not animated, but a real shot of a real hand writing those Japanese characters, and then it says calligraphy by Katsuhiro Otomo. I mean, that piece of the opening credit gets its own credit. I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah,
I like that too.
Agree.
The entire opening is very, you mentioned it earlier, but it's very, the entire film is this way, but the opening in particular I felt was very cinematic in a live action way, where we're doing those big full screen credits, we're cross cutting between different things, we're hearing narration while seeing other people that are talking that we can't hear them because it's happening somewhere else. Like, and
there's a couple of moments in the movie where we see a live action shot. I think at some point we see a real TV incorporated into the animation.
The shots of the games that you could play on the device, I think, were probably taken from. I can't imagine that they went to the trouble to animate those because they looked too close to actual.
I remember thinking,
graphics.
like, man, this looks fucking great. So it's probably live action and just through the filters and stuff. But yeah, that stood out to me too, but not in a bad way. And another kind of like, mixed media sort of. Yeah.
And it does something to your brain. It makes you think. It switches something because there's a disturbance in a way in what you're seeing, and that makes it interesting. There's a bit of a almost like a glitch in the Matrix, you know?
Yeah, totally.
You guys commented a couple of times if this counts as horror, and I would absolutely argue so. I mean, we've always have blends in some genres. We talked about Akira being body horror in the past, and at least for the first half of this movie, before it becomes a robot fight, I thought this could be a Cronenberg movie, father or son.
Especially if they were to take that, if you take that through line with death and everything else, like that. I was going to ask, and I stepped away earlier, so maybe you said it and I missed it, but what was the moment, if you remember, that Kostansky mentioned? That was his memory.
Something with the bed. He just talked about an electrical bed doing something.
I wondered if that would be it, because that would stick in my head too. It's a crazy visual, especially if you don't have context.
Definitely something I don't think any other anime has probably done to the same level. So
and I don't know. I think the other guy was able to identify the movie that quickly because he was talking about this bed, and that's probably very specific to this movie.
I like the Japanese theatrical poster that's on Wikipedia. I mean, just compositionally it looks cool, but the poster, I don't know if it was for an American localization.
It may have been the Manga Entertainment release, because I remember
the one on
that being
Letterboxd.
used. Yeah.
The one on Letterboxd is more, I think, in one image sells kind of what the movie is and the tones, because it's an image of him
Bed in
coming
the
out
hallway.
of the bed, kind of,
Yeah.
at the end of the hallway. And there's definitely the sci-fi aspect, but then there is a horror tinge to it as well. Like it looks like something crazy. It's just that's one still image.
We would probably definitely say sci-fi first, but I think this counts as sci-fi horror. We would not necessarily put it strictly into the horror section. We would put it into the sci-fi section, but into the subsection of sci-fi horror.
Yeah, no, that's fair
If you
enough.
if you were an American blockbuster in the 90s, it would be in the anime section. So
I mean, of course,
I mean,
anime
that's
A to
still-
Z, no distinction at all.
the genre.
Yeah, even now, if you go into an HMV in the UK, like everything is just anime. It's
Just
you
anime.
don't get any delineation between. Yeah,
But I
And
think,
then-
as we've already discussed, like would I call this movie a comedy? Not really, but there's tons of it's the same kind of thing.
well,
It's,
it would get
it's
an Oscar for
definitely-
comedy.
Yeah, it's definitely dabbling.
Yeah, probably be
in,
called a musical as well, without knowing their standards.
Oh yeah, the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then,
I
David,
saw
you
that
talked
recently,
about
weapons.
this
Yeah.
animation of that era and your connection to it, and that is something that I very much feel the same. I mean, of course, me being 12 years older, that's kind of an era that I grew up in. Akira is one of the first, well, probably not even one of the first anime that I saw, but I did see it pretty early in the late 80s, early 90s. But I've always seen just animated movies on TV where I wasn't even quite aware that they are from Japan, or that it is. It's not, the term anime wasn't a thing yet in the US. It was called Japanimation.
Japanimation.
At some point before we all learned the term anime, probably in the mid 90s or so, and then that is something. So 1991. That is a little after the end of the Showa period in Japan, which ended in 1989. But again, Otomo probably writing the story a little earlier, and then, as we know, like fashion trends and something don't just end with a decade or a period. So the art of animation in 1991 was probably still pretty much the same as it was in 1988, when it would have still been the Showa era.
Yeah.
But it's something that I decry a lot, especially in manga, that we have so few manga published in the West from the Showa era, because the modern manga reader is used to something more modern than up to the end of the 80s. But I gravitate so much to the art style of, and the Showa era actually began in 1926, I believe, definitely in the 1920s, but mostly it's used for the post-war era, so post-World War II up to the end of the 80s. And there's, I love that art style so much in manga. And I'm always happy when something is getting a new publication. As I told you, probably last year, when Devilman was released in Germany for the very the first Go Nagai manga that was ever published in German, and then they didn't have the license to publish all the books. There's only 3, 4 and 5 were not published. But anyway, and with anime, it's similar. That I love that art style so much, and you kind of hear Japanese city pop from the 80s in your ear when you're watching this animation. I listen to so much city pop on YouTube, and they often have an illustration or a bit of an animation going on in the video, and it's that style from the 80s. And yeah, I love it so much. I mean, there's great modern animation. We all love Shakoto Minkai.
Makoto Shinkai.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that way around. When I'm talking and thinking, that doesn't work too well.
Cool.
Your name, Suzume, Weathering with You.
Yeah.
Fantastic animation. No argument there. But yeah, when and as you know, if we go back to The Omen or Wolfen, when I say that during the opening credits, movie looks already better than most of the stuff that I'm seeing today, just because of the grain in the style, the 70s, 80s, and I just love that so much. And and this movie definitely has that as well. I think I'm sure there's younger people who would say, "Oh man, I don't like the animation, I don't like the design sense, I don't like the characters," but to me, this looks fresh as ever, and I enjoy the images and everything so much.
Yeah,
Did you guys watch it on YouTube as well?
Yeah.
It's shockingly amazing transfer. I thought like it looked very good on YouTube. So
it really
shout out to whoever put that up.
I don't know if you watched the link that I had sent. I believe mine was censored when during this presentation of the bed.
I think it might be in all versions because I looked.
Both versions I watched had it. Yeah.
Yeah, I looked up the parents guide on IMDb because I was like, is this something I can watch with Daniel around or not? And it mentioned that part specifically and said that it was censored. So I think that's just all of them.
But my assumption was just that it was a YouTube thing, that they had censored it for YouTube, maybe. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? It's
really not too much for listeners. It's just they put a black spot over an exposed penis.
Yeah.
When there's a demonstration of the bed and the old man is lying naked in that bed. So
I mean, the dude's 87.
Not a Roujin Z blood or brain dead cut where we've lost 8 minutes of gore or anything.
The dude's 87 years old. There's probably less to see there than there was in the Simpsons movie. I still can't believe they did that with Bart. I cannot believe it. I just wanted to add on to your thoughts about show era manga and anime, Andy. I think if anyone is not sure if they enjoy that style, then they probably haven't watched Vampire Hunter D yet. So they need to correct that immediately. That's a really awesome... again, can't remember if it's an OVA or a full movie, but it came from, I think, late 80s, early 90s, and it's got a very... identifiable art style. Everyone is stretched out a little bit, kind of like that. To draw a really unexpected parallel, there was a Phantom animated series from like the mid 90s, I think. Where
you're talking about Phantom of the 2049 or whatever,
possibly, yeah,
the one in the future.
Yeah, it may have been, but like all the characters were really drawn out, like very long limbs and just very spindly looking characters. Looked pretty fucking weird. It's got to be that. I do love that era of anime. Like a lot of people will point to Cowboy Bebop and things of that era, like 1998, 1999 being the point where things really turned from like the old style to the new. I don't think that's possible. I think there are possibly earlier examples, but definitely like shows like Bebop were where the production standards for everything around a show, animation, dubbing, all that kind of stuff really kind of came together to form something that was a lot more easy to digest by Western audiences. I
think it was just the era when things were more available in the West, when they started showing these things on TV, and when a generation that now dominates the discourse grew up in. That's the thing that they saw on TV when they were younger. At work, I talk to people that are way younger than me, and they don't know any of the shows that I grew up on. I talk about Captain Future all the time. You've heard me talk about it. My favorite animated show from my childhood, an anime show before we knew the term that was not very successful in Japan or in most countries. You guys weren't aware of the show. In Germany, it was huge when I grew up, I think now we are, again, I'm older than you guys, but at this point, if you look at the discourse on social media or wherever, you guys also now probably count as the older guys, and we, if you live long enough, you will experience that things that at some point are accepted as the main opinion a generation later that will change. When I grew up, it was absolutely certain that the original Terminator is the better movie than Terminator 2 because it is the original.
Yeah.
Now it's completely different. Now people are absolutely certain that Terminator 2 is the superior movie.
If there's ever an example of a sequel that's better than the original one, it's always Terminator 2 and Godfather. If anybody's gonna throw one out there,
Star Wars, and then there's discussion of Alien and Aliens again, depending probably on which you've seen first or when you grew up. If Alien or Aliens is the better movie.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely like I know that there's going to be a little bit of confirmation bias based on what you grow up on, but I think that when we're talking about anime and its impact on the West and its popularity in the West, I don't think that there is going to be an argument in the future where people start claiming, oh, no, for sure, like the time that anime got really big was when Bleach started. Because that's not when it started getting really popular. When it started getting really popular was probably Ghost in the Shell and Urotsuki Doji. And then Cowboy Bebop became like this figurehead for accessible, well-dubbed, easy-to-access anime in the late 90s, early 2000s. People can argue what they want about, oh, well, you know, it's never been more accessible than when Crunchyroll went legit. And there's an argument to that as well. But from an accessibility point of view and from the point of view of it taking off, you know, manga entertainment started back in like the early 90s. They had an effect on the availability in the UK, certainly, of anime. And certainly they had an amazing impact on the sales figures for the Mad Capsule Markets albums, because they used a couple of their songs in their trailer for all of the upcoming projects at the beginning of the VHS videos that I used to watch. But yeah, like there's always going to be like the next generation who say, no, this is the thing, this is the thing. But the argument of what is the best thing ever versus what is the thing that started the rise of this media format. You know, it's like talking about K-pop. I'm not a huge fan of K-pop. I'm not a huge expert on it, but I've had some dealings recently because of Generation Animation. You know, there's going to be a generation that say, oh, K-pop Demon Hunters was where K-pop kicked off. And it's like, there's going to be a whole generation of Blackpink fans that are like, fuck off. What are you talking about? There's going to be some Psy fans out there that probably reckon that he's got something to do with it. I'm not entirely sure about that. But, you know, like that's where these arguments can go. And I'm not going to say whether it's right or wrong and you know, who's absolutely correct. But I definitely do maintain that around about the kind of like the era where the internet started to become an actual resource for accessing shows coincides with the PlayStation 2 becoming an accessible DVD player for the masses, and also coincides with the launch of shows like Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo. And there's another one that I can't remember right now, but my friend was mad about it, and he had the box set back in like 2000, and he loved it. But yeah, like there's arguments will continue, and the one thing that I will always be certain about is that the Star Wars prequels will never be great movies. They will never be good movies. They will just be movies.
I mean that's another discussion where you get into generations where people that grew up
Revenge
with
of the Sith made a fuckload of money
and,
this year in the theaters.
Yep, and
because of that.
There's a whole generation that grew up on those movies, and
I get it.
Generation
I get it.
On the animation. And my argument wasn't that people argue where it started, but
no. But I think that they can confuse the two concepts. Like, you know,
everyone will point to Akira, being like the first big anime in the West, where people became really aware of Japanese animation.
Oh, awareness.
But then
absolutely.
In Germany, it's always Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon. Those were the two shows on TV where TV anime became really big. And then also the manga, Dragon Ball, the manga was the first one that really kicked off. Of course, Akira was already there, and Crying Freeman and Ghost in the Shell. But Dragon Ball is when it really started, when they started printing them in Japanese reading order. When it didn't convert them to a Western reading order, but still the the current generation, they didn't grow up with these things when they.
Yeah, of course.
They don't have the same connection, so they discuss other things. And I've talked to people that and I may have mentioned that before. And it was long ago, but I've talked to a guy years ago that said he never watches movies that are older than 10 years. So the older he gets, the fewer movies the movies get lost in the past. A movie that he watched last year that was 10 years old, he will not watch this year. I don't know if he's still like that. That was decades ago. Or movies, just in general, they don't watch movies that are black and white or older than themselves or whatever. So because the discussion is, or where we started, I think, was if you've never seen a movie from that era, watch Vampire Hunter D or whatever it was. They still might not like it because they are used to a different type of animation, and maybe in 10 years they appreciate it. I mean, maybe. I think David went to several of these moments during the 10 years that we're doing this podcast where he realized the German silent movie from the 1920s is my favorite movie ever.
Absolutely true. It's maybe the best movie we've ever done on the show.
Yeah, or a Swedish movie that Dave didn't like that much, but David and I thought it's a fantastic silent film with great effects. The Phantom Carriage.
Phantom Carriage, yeah.
Still one of the best movies I've ever seen. Yeah.
Yeah, let's. I was going to say let's not talk about, but we all know what I'm going to mention. There's a movie out there from New Zealand that I'm not a big fan of.
2 weeks in a row this has come up.
2 weeks in a row. I keep bringing shit back. We've got an interconnected cinematic universe going on here.
All right. I feel like we could probably wrap it up here, unless you guys have any other big thoughts before we do double feature picks.
No, I'm good.
No.
All right, let's do it. Andi, kick us off. What you got?
So, Bianca told me to mention her double feature pick.
Oh, yes.
Because I wouldn't pick it. Because I've only seen this movie. Not because I dislike the movie. I only saw it once a long time ago. It's not that ingrained in me as it is in her. But Hackers, because of this elderly hacker group in the film that was so much fun. She immediately thought of Hackers, and she said, "If you don't pick Hackers as your double feature pick, something's wrong with you." And I was like, I'm not going to pick Hackers. But
the password is swordfish. It's always swordfish.
The movie that I will pick, I picked because of one tiny element that we haven't mentioned yet, but I'm sure you must have noticed it. The first time we get introduced to these hackers, they hack into the Tyrell Corporation, the U.S.
Oh shit, that's
and
right.
find out that they've committed tax fraud.
Yeah.
So this exists in the Blade Runner universe, so I'm picking Blade Runner as my double feature pick.
Fair play. This is a double feature pick that would not work if you watch the dub, because they completely excise that from existence.
And I made sure when we had finished the movie, I went back to that moment because it said Tyrell in the subtitles, and I wanted to make sure that they actually say Tyrell, that it is not only in the subtitles, that it is in the Japanese original, and it is that guy actually says Tyrell.
That's so
awesome. Stealth prequel to Blade Runner. That's great. Okay, I'll jump in next. I always call my double feature picks boring when they like have a very obvious connection, but I could have picked this last week just to get people to read it. Domu, A Child's Dream. I'll go with that. I think that there's also a lot of sort of thematic two sides of the coin thing going on. Like there's an elderly child thing happening, and that's touches on similar themes, but in a totally different way. But mostly I just want people to read that comic. If you can find a copy of it, supposedly it maybe someday will be reprinted, but it's out there, and I'll go with that. Dave, what you got?
I mean, I would say that's a great pick, personally.
Thanks, man.
I definitely considered it. I think that there's as much because like the elderly dude at the beginning of Domu with the winged cap on is like just a spitting fucking image, and of course he is, because it's Otomo that's drawn them. So like, why wouldn't it be? But yeah, no, I dig that as a choice. I'm going to go for an Otomo project as well. And if you cast your minds back all the way to a sunny day in July in 2024 when we came together to talk about a film called Memories, which was made in 1995. It was episode 414 of Eerie International, which you can listen to right now on the website, as well as on your feeds, because I've just checked and it is part of the new feed. But yeah, I specifically thought about this because of the second of the 3 episodes that Memories contains. I think it was called Stink Bomb.
Oh shit, that's right.
Yeah. So the story of Stink Bomb is that a guy's got a cold. He takes what he thinks is a cold remedy. It turns out it's a bioweapon, and it turns him into the most destructive man on earth. He goes on the run, and he wreaks havoc everywhere he goes. And it was the moment when the bed took her husband out on the road to go on a road trip to go to the beach that I immediately clicked into it. And then the fact that it was also Otomo that was responsible for it. And on top of that, one other little interesting factoid for everybody, and I'm just double-checking my facts right now, live on air, because that is absolutely the most interesting thing that you people can listen to right now. I believe it is the only other movie that he's worked on that has not been based on an original manga. I'm just checking, and no, I'm completely wrong, because I think Steam Boy was an original property.
I've still never seen that. I remember when I was working
great
at Blockbuster when it came out, so I put away a lot of copies of it. But
it's fantastic. It really is. It is, however, one of only 4 projects that he has written for but has not directed. Roujin Z, Metropolis, and then if you count the separate entries of Memories as individual projects, Magnetic Rose and Stink Bomb. Those are the 4 that he's written but not directed. And if you want to be funny about it, he did a live action thing as well called High School Erotopia Red Uniforms, which is a porno. He wrote for that.
I did look up. I didn't realize he had done a couple of live action films too. That World Apartment Horror and Mushishi, I was reading about both of those. Because World Apartment Horror is mentioned in the Roujin Zeto article, that some of them had worked together. And that was one of the kind of like crossover. It's also the reason I guess Otomo didn't direct Roujin, was because he was focused on that. Man, I also just realized if you look at the picture of Katsuhiro Otomo on Wikipedia, there's a crazy dude behind his head photobombing him in the creepiest, weirdest way. I don't think on purpose, but it's very distracting.
I have to
anyway.
Look at this. Oh, and on top of everything else, just to tie everything up so nicely that I couldn't have planned it any better, I mentioned earlier when we were talking about anime about Cowboy Bebop. Now, a few years ago, another show called Space Dandy came out.
Yeah.
And he basically contributed a bunch of designs for Space Dandy. Apparently, it was episode 22 of Space Dandy that he helped with. So yeah, that ties everything up with a beautiful little bow. Man, that is just a creepy photobomb. What the fuck?
It's so weird.
What? I'm not shaming the dude, because God knows I haven't exactly got an award-winning smile myself. But
well, it looks like a guy's smiling probably at something else, but it's just framed in a way that it looks like the fucking lipstick demon from that shot in Insidious with Patrick Wilson.
Oh fuck yeah!
Right behind his head.
Okay, yep, okay, I'm creeped out.
You know what? I change it. My double feature pick is this picture of Katsuhiro Otomo. I urge everyone to check it out after you watch.
There you go.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. Yeah, no, this is I'm super happy we did this one. Yeah, like I said, this was absolutely not really on my radar, and not only should it be on more people's radars, but it's easy enough to watch on YouTube and has plenty going for it. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways still relevant. But yeah, great pick, Andi. Glad we talked about this. Listeners out there, if you enjoyed it, if you haven't watched it, if you have watched it, whatever you want to do, go do that. I don't know what that was a call to action for. But if you did watch it, let us know what you thought over on social media or via Gmail if you'd like, eerieinternational@gmail.com. In the meantime, though, stay safe out there. Keep watching horror movies, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.